Hello and welcome back to Magnetic Rise. It is the podcast created by Strategnetic, where we dig into the real stories and the sharp strategies behind B2B growth. Today, we're going deep into the future and the now of businesses. Our guest is Alejandro Mainetto, a thought leader in artificial intelligence and digital transformation with years of experience in helping businesses modernize and innovate. And I'm very excited for this conversation that we're going to have today. Welcome to Magnetic Rise.
Siki, thank you for having me here, and a pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Perfect. So I want to start with a little bit of a background on who you are, what do you do, and also how did you get to where you are today?
Sure, happy to do that. So, I'm a technology executive. Been around the industry for more than 20 years. My story was basically I grew up in the Northeast. I am based now in Florida for the last 15 years, and I started my career in engineering and information technology, project management. And my career essentially is divided kind of into three chunks. The first one as a corporate CIO and CTO, so a corporate technology leader. Second chunk of my career in consulting, many years doing that as a technology advisor, but also as a senior consultant in corporations like Ernst& Young and Microsoft. And then last but not least, I'm a two-time entrepreneur. I'm a two-time founder. And for the last 5 years, I've been running my company, and also I'm a partner with a company called CXO Partners, where we provide fractional CIO and CTO in interim leadership as well.
That's quite a resume, hey?
Thank you.
Yes. So what sparked your interest in the intersection of technology and business initially?
Yeah, so my interest really sparked in the, and I'm gonna date myself here, but it's in the when the internet boom occurred, and it's in, I'm talking about the mid to late '90s, and I was working for IBM at the time, and IBM was really a pioneer in a number of the fields and things that we're going to be talking about today, in particular around AI. One of the the things that really caught my attention was this inflection points that have happened since, since sort of the mid 90s all the way until just about a couple of years ago. And even now, there's been five inflection points. And I've been lucky enough, I have to tell you, that I've been part of each of those inflection points throughout that career. And
Yeah.
so kind of the first inflection point happened. I don't know if you remember when IBM first sort of beat the chess champion in, Gary Kasparov in chess, and then the same IBM company beat the champion at Jeopardy, and so all those kind of initial inflection points happen. And they're really in the advent of when AI was starting to become popular. I think then, things like Siri and Alexa came on, and my company at the time, we were working actively in helping companies understand what does digital strategy really mean, and how do I utilize some of these technologies that are not only AI in nature but also speech and conversational. And then the last two inflection points came when I would say kind of the earlier days on what is now considered Chat GPT and a lot of the generative AI technologies. That's when neural networks became very popular. And then in the last 2 years, well, unless you've been in a cave, right? You've probably all heard about GPT and Chat GPT, and that's what I would call is kind of the fifth inflection point. I've been, like I said, lucky enough that I've been part of this journey all along.
Yeah, so definitely you're the best person to ask my next question. And it's clear that AI is everywhere, but for some reason, B2B companies, it's not exactly always clear how to apply it. It is still fairly new to the public. So with your expertise, what's your take on how businesses should approach integrating AI into their corporations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. I think that the first thing that it starts is that they need to define clear business goals. That is absolutely the most important thing. A lot of companies think that AI is just about technology, and it could even be, the more of the opposite. AI is just as much about business and as it is about technology because it's so transformative. I think that the second thing that they need to do is then think about what is the right business problem, and they need to frame up what is it that they need AI to help them do, right? And define what are the right use cases and where they want to invest their time to either prototype or see where AI can make an impact into their organization. One of the other things that they need to do, and this is something that a lot of people talk to me about all the time, is around the fact that companies don't invest enough in getting outside help, and so a lot of times they think that they can do it all themselves, and so they need to invest in getting help. I would say then the next couple of things are that they need to be able to pilot and learn from that, right? They need to learn fast from whatever it is that they are doing and whatever are their goals. And then they need to set up the right infrastructure so that they can proceed and then integrate AI into their organization.
Okay. You actually made reference to a pretty important point, which I think a lot of the companies don't get external help. But I think the reason for that could also be maybe because it's costly, especially for the smaller businesses that are maybe run with one or two people on a team or something like that, and they can't necessarily afford it at that specific point. As someone who's got integrating tech into their vision in the long run, but isn't ready to do it right now. What are some of the high impact or low cost starting points for the smaller businesses to sort of set a good foundation for when they're ready to then bring someone on to handle that specifically?
Yeah, great question because as I was mentioning before with CXO partners, that we work with actually middle market companies and small the small medium and market. And one of the things that we do is that a lot of people think that this is unaffordable to get the outside help, and there is something called fractional or interim leadership, and that's something that they can get as a small business. Instead of going and paying somebody to be on staff all the time, they can get the assistance of somebody who has 20, 30, 40 years of experience at a very reasonable rate, and they can also afford to be able to get all the knowledge and expertise in guiding them and what they need to do at a fraction of what they would need to pay somebody that would be full time. So that's one way to do it.
Mhm.
The other thing that they need to consider is that when they're about to implement a solution, they need to consider what's called either a nearshore option or an offshore option. So, as they develop these solutions for their own companies, they don't have to hire developers here in the United States. They can hire them outside, and there's a lot of great options to do it. Like I said, in a nearshore fashion or as an offshore fashion as well.
That's some very interesting points to think about, actually. And I like that you provide a solution to what is a lot of people's problems and they never know where to start. So that's awesome. Um, Moving on to more about the human side, customer experience. Why do you
Sure.
believe that it's one of the most important differentiators of today?
Yeah, customer experience has been around. The term alone has been around for a long time, but not a whole lot of people were paying attention to it until about 2012, when another word came about that became a buzzword for a while, which was digital strategy. And the notion is, let me give you an analogy of a car, right? At the end of the day, all cars have engines, and they all can get you probably from point A through to point B. But the thing is that how that car looks and how intuitive the car feels inside, in that dashboard that you utilize as a consumer, or how or why do people buy Macs versus PC sometimes, and it's about the ease of use, right? And so that's the same analogy that I would utilize, that There's a lot of commodities out there in the technology world, and it is about the consumer experience, and it's that customer experience that allows you to really um, differentiate yourself, and instead of just being copied by the next person over and over again. And that's why I think it's so critical and so important that companies and businesses pay attention to ensuring that they don't only think about the technology solution, but they think, yeah, as much on how this thing is going to look like, and how does it come across from an experience, not only for their customers but also for their employees as well.
Okay, with that being said, how does customer experience then connect with AI and digital transformation?
Yeah, I think that digital transformation, think of it as kind of an overall arching strategy, because that's going to encompass really an entire business transformation. I think that then customer experience is one of the primary goals that I would say that they need to be shooting for, right? So customer experience is one of those things that is going to be the driving force in a lot of ways, or one of the key driving forces behind digital transformation. And then artificial intelligence in that strategy is going to be a powerful set of tools and capabilities that they're going to enable in order to either accelerate that transformation or ensure that that customer experience is enhanced, or become superior, right? When you're sort of developing your next product or your next solution that you're going to take to market.
Okay, okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um, okay, speaking more specifically about AI now, in your view, how do you think the role of it will evolve in the next 3 to 5 years for B2B companies?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one, and it's all going to depend on a number of factors. But let me give you some generic thought patterns. I think that in 3 to 5 years, AI becomes core to many businesses' operations, especially if you're a B2B business. I think it stops being a fad and it becomes real. I think it goes from just being utilized as a tool that you think about using it for automation, and it really becomes a tool that you start using for augmentation. And that's a concept that today a lot of companies are not necessarily thinking about too much. They're just thinking about, how do I replace people? Instead, think about, how do you get to a point where you augment first, and then eventually you look for efficiencies. I think that there's this concept of virtual assistants that are in 3 years is going to become pretty much a de facto standard, and eventually it's going to become into actual physical roles, right? And at some point we'll talk about, maybe in another podcast we could talk about robotics and the integration of what that's going to mean for the future of AI. But what that means is that companies also, because of all these things, they're going to tend to keep their headcounts flatter, which is probably not a good thing for those that in the future are going to be looking for those regular jobs. So they need to think about now, what are those jobs for the future, right? What are the things that are going to be around the corner? And I think the last thing I leave you with is that companies are going to really need to be thinking heavily about uh, what I call the trifecta of ethics, compliance, and legal, right? And companies cannot underestimate how much effort that they need to be putting into that, and for that they need to get outside help, in case they don't have that help internally.
Okay. For that business leader who's just listened to your last answer and is thinking, I don't want to be left behind. I definitely want to be on this train of the digital transformation and all the new tools that we're having that are being available to us now. But their company is still sort of stuck in using outdated tools or systems. What is the first step that you would recommend for them to slowly start modernizing so they can catch up with the rest of the businesses?
Yeah, I. I'll give you two things that I think are critical, and they are connected. So put your employees first and your customer second. And I know that
Okay.
may sound counterintuitive, but I think that when you think about customer experience, the enablers of that customer experience are your employees. And if you get that right, then all the products and services that your company sells and delivers uh, are going to excel, because you not only paid attention to the customer experience but also to the employee experience. So that would be the first thing that I would advise a business. The second thing that I would advise a business is, learn about AI, and also ensure that you're thinking now about how you're going to upskill or reskill your employees in this sort of age of AI. You need to start now, because if you wait for a couple of years, it's going to be too late. So start now. Don't be afraid of AI. Embrace it, and you'll do really well.
Mm. Okay, amazing. Alex, thank you so much for such a rich and future forward conversation. I think what stood out the most to me is that whilst we're talking about advanced technologies, the real edge still sort of lies in understanding people. So your customers, your teams, and your users as well, which is quite an important thing to pay attention to these days. For anyone who has listened to this conversation, is sort of interested in your insights, is sort of interested in getting in touch with you for some help with their businesses and getting your services, where can they reach you?
They can reach me at, just to give you my quickest email, it would be amainetto@gmail.com. Mainetto@gmail.com. So first initial, last name at gmail.com. And I'll be happy to talk to anyone that has any questions regarding this, or any companies that need any guidance in respect to this or any other technology topics.
Perfect. There you have it. So whether you're a tech company or running a traditional business, success isn't just about automation or data. It's about intentional transformation that keeps the customer at the center. So until next time, keep rising and leading the digital shift with the human touch. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Siki. It was a pleasure.